Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's ILTA webinar, Corporate Legal Departments Reach for the DMS Cloud. I'm Marcia, and I'll be serving as your moderator. Our speaker today is Peter Lamb, and I want to thank RBRO Solutions for sponsoring today's webinar. Today's presentation will run about 45 to 60 minutes, and we ask that you submit all of your questions to the Q&A box. And if those are not answered during the presentation, they'll be addressed at the end. And before we start, please note that we're recording today's webinar and we'll post a link to our website under recording shortly after today's presentation. At the end of the presentation, we ask that you take a few moments to complete the evaluation. And I'll now turn the webinar over to Peter.
Thanks very much, Marcia, and welcome everyone. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy days. We're hoping that we can impart a little information now about the current state of the market for document management systems, and specifically, of course, for document management systems related to corporate legal departments. As most of you know, who I know are all from corporate legal departments in various sorts and sizes. The application of technology within a corporate legal department can have its challenges. We'll talk a little bit about that. The implementation of document management systems within corporate legal departments can have its challenges. Recent changes over the last couple of years with the availability of cloud options for document management systems have changed the landscape a little bit. We here at RBRO, we'll talk very briefly about us, have seen a tremendous uptake in the last 2 years of corporate legal departments of all sizes in taking on document management systems, and most specifically because of the availability of the cloud option. So I'd like to talk today about a couple of things that we have learned through our experiences. Really in two parts. One about the need for a document management system, the justification and ROIs of a document management system within a legal department, and then very specifically why the cloud is the right solution for a legal department. So I'll carry on. Just very briefly who we are. We don't want to take too long on this. This is about you and your needs. We are RBRO Solutions. We are a Platinum iManage partner. Although we will not be specifically talking about iManage today, we will be talking about document management systems in general. We have been around for 15 years implementing both our services and our custom developed tools in about 400 firms of all sizes around the world, including almost 100 corporate legal departments of various sizes, again, around the globe. So we know a little bit of what we speak. Talk a little bit about why a corporate legal department might need document management. Now, many of you I know already do have document management systems, but there are a few on this webinar who do not. And that question of justification of the cost of a document management system is always a needly little point, sometimes difficult to prove. So we're going to look at some of the driving factors behind that. We have looked at some recent studies, and these are interesting numbers to digest. And again, this is U.S. only. U.S. businesses generate more than 4 trillion paper documents per year, growing at an annual rate of 22%. That's a pretty big number. It takes a while to settle in to what that means in the number of documents that are created by business. Now, business, of course, also includes law firms. We are some of the largest creators of paper, and hence one of the largest users for document management systems to try and manage what that is. Ethics, compliance, regulatory changes, data security remain the most important legal issues facing corporate legal departments. I don't think anyone would disagree with me, as I would suggest that over the course of the last 2 to 3 years, continuing changes on the compliance landscape have changed our need for reporting, have changed our need for security around documents, around document collections, and these will continue to change and continue to become more complex. As we look at GDPR, as we look at some of the other worldwide regulations that force us to ensure that we are compliant with these regulations, the idea of managing documents becomes more and more complex. Corporate legal departments are increasingly tasked with ensuring that your companies comply with all the regulatory rules around their data. And that, of course, is most specific for those that work in the financial industry, with continuing financial audits, with continuing technology audits coming your way from all of your various clients and all of your various matters that you need to work with. An increased influx of talent from law firm environments demanding better functionality. Our experience over the last years shows us, and we're supported with some industry knowledge, that there is a movement towards repatriation of staff, increasing staff members' repatriation of work that currently is being handled by your panel of law firms, increasingly bringing more and more work internally. And we are seeing growing departments. That, of course, calls for a appropriate implementation of technology to support that need for increased functionality, for increased amounts of work. Of course, all of it under the guise of reducing your costs. So you're kind of caught in a rock and a hard place. Bring in more work to reduce those costs, so we're not paying the fees from our sometimes overpriced panel of law firms, but at the same time, keep your spend down. Those are some interesting challenges. And of course, that is exacerbated by the fact that, for the most part, corporate legal departments have limited access to the broader IT resources in the mainline business. So some challenges that are there, some operational challenges. Document management system can be perceived by corporate IT teams as a problem. It's a sophisticated, feature-rich application used by a minority of users. You can have situations where you have large companies with 100,000 employees, 999,000 of them using the mainline applications, and the legal department needing another set of applications, and somewhat sophisticated applications. This is a challenge to get support, both financially and from a day-to-day perspective from an IT department, unless you are one of those corporate law departments that is blessed with having at least a liaison to the IT department. This can be a challenge. Your practice and matter management systems that are typically employed by CLDs that try to be jack of all trades, that try to do everything, are generally weak in dealing on a large scale with documents, and most specifically within those practice and matter management systems, specifically dealing with email. And anecdotal evidence would have us suggest that 75 to 80% of all of the relevant documents for any particular project that you may have, for any particular case you may be managing, are contained within emails that are currently, in most cases, unmanaged and unstructured data. Increased outsourcing and demands for work-life balance are driving the need for strong mobility and collaboration. This is one that we have seen in spades in the last 2 years. Most of the more advanced and industry-leading applications in all fronts, not just document management, but very specifically, the leading document management manufacturers now are starting from a mobility outwards base. And the good applications are based, starting, as I say, on mobility to allow for that kind of collaboration, that kind of mobility, and that kind of work-life balance that is being looked for, especially amongst corporate legal departments. There's a greater need than ever for corporate law departments to demonstrate that documents are being managed properly and in a secure environment. Security, as we all know, is becoming the #1 concern. It certainly is. If you would ask a CIO at a law firm, that CIO would tell you that that is the #1 concern right now, is overall intrusion security and security of individual data, document, and content repositories. Once again, calling for some sort of management of that content and those repositories that is auditable and measurable. So what does a document system need to be, document management system? Well, it needs to be a must-have, a core application. Lawyers generally rate this along with their smartphones as a must-have. When you look at your disaster recovery processes, it generally ranks right up there with email, and rightfully so. If I can't get access to my documents, I can't get access to anything. So it becomes a core application, as it should be and needs to be managed as such. It enables collaboration and mobility. This is one of the areas where cloud implementations can take broad steps forward in collaboration through online deal rooms, online document repositories, and online sharing capabilities enabled with secure cloud technology. That collaboration between law firm and corporate legal department can be improved, as I say, with broad steps with today's cloud technology that was simply not available in even a year ago. The system that reduces complexity by bringing data and people together in an intuitive interface. Any of us that are as old as I am have seen interfaces back from the old green screen through to many different interfaces. Millennials and younger lawyers entering the business today have expectations of different types of interfaces, again, that they are more used to in social media, that we are more used to on our telephones, that we are more used to with online applications. Better manufacturers, quality manufacturers of document management systems have taken this into account and have given not just one, but generally a number of different choices of interfaces built for different types of users. Trying to reduce, again, the complexity, reduce the training needs, and to increase adoption with systems that are simple and intuitive to use. Increase automation and efficiency. Help lawyers, counsel dedicate more time to improving client service and managing costs as opposed to quote unquote playing with the system and learning how to use it. I want to spend more time practicing law. I want to spend more time doing what I'm trying to do as opposed to working with the technology. I want the technology to a certain extent to be as invisible as possible. And I want to reduce risk and satisfy those ever-growing compliance demands, to be able to state that your documents are safe at all times, to be able to prove that, to show that, and to ensure that I'm under all demands that I have for discovery, for chain of authority, et cetera, et cetera. Continuing, we need to retain, so therefore we need to retain a repository of electronic documents. We need to provide a mechanism to secure those documents. And as we talk about documents, important to remember and understand that in a good document management system, in a well-developed and mature document management system, emails are included in that umbrella of documents. That anything that is relevant to a case, anything that is relevant to a file, is maintained in one place, easily accessible, including emails, attachments, documents, anything that might be considered as part of that. Just as we used to have the BRAD, just as we used to have our banker's boxes that made up the bulk of a case, we want to reproduce that in an electronic way and ensure that I can assume the integrity of that matter based on maintaining access to all. I don't want to have to go to multiple places. I don't want to find documents in one place and emails in another. Integrates with other software solutions being utilized. Certainly, you probably have workflow applications. Certainly, you will have management applications. You will have matter management applications, IP practices. Your IP practice will, if needed, have some sort of IP management. You have calendar reminder systems. Any number of systems that you are currently using. It is important to ensure that if you look at implementing a document management system to underlie all of those other applications, that you're not forced to stop using those. So it's absolutely critical to ensure that those integrations are available and working. Most, again, of the mature applications within the law firm and legal technology market sector do work together. Sometimes they need a little work, but any of the common applications, they've learned this years ago, that none of them can stand alone. But it's important to ensure, if you're looking, that these issues are looked after. Provide a method for putting documents into defined workflows. We are seeing a great deal of work on workflows, including artificial intelligence in those workflows, most specifically for many corporate law departments around contract and contract management, contract approval methodologies, contract comparison methodologies. You need to ensure that your document management system can be a part of that, and in many cases, hopefully the driving repository behind those, where both contracts are stored and where contracts can be compared and managed appropriately. Supplies audit data, providing for the W's, who, what, where, when, and why. I need that audit data to be able to be exported from my document management system, for instance, for discovery reasons, or for providing document collections to my law firm. I need to be able to provide that audit data with the collection of documents. Something that on the surface sounds easy, but is not, not terribly. So again, your more mature systems will be able to provide, with a collection of documents, we'll be able to provide audit sheets, we'll be able to provide data sheets, providing that historical and audit document information that is required. And again, you can't mention this enough, that complies with the regulatory requirements, which are increasing. So how do we determine, given that this stuff, of course, doesn't come for free, how do we determine how we can sell this? How can I offer up a perspective to management on the ROIs of the document management system for a corporate legal department? Well, the largest challenge justifying legal technology solutions in a corporate legal department is the fact that within the overall mainline business, whether we like it or not, legal department is a cost center and not a revenue center. So the models for a law firm ROI on a document management system are considerably different than the ROIs for a corporate legal department, because exactly that, I can't measure it off really against revenue. As a cost center, and I don't think I'm telling any of you anything new, you are under constant pressure to control your costs, to manage more effectively, to control your spend, and the only way to do that with increasing needs and no control over the amount of work that's thrown at you. Stuff comes over the fence mostly on Fridays, of course, and you have to deal with that, is the application, the well-managed application of appropriate technologies to help manage those documents. So again, you're spending more time dealing with managing your case, managing your matter, than you are in managing your law firms, than you are managing the documents and the technology behind it. Return on investment in improving efficiency, to be honest, not a word I like very much, is difficult to prove and justified. Most specifically, more difficult when I can't measure it against the, our good old friend, the billable hour. It becomes a little more difficult for organizations like a CLD that are not driven by billable hours to justify efficiency, to understand what efficiency is, as compared to technology that more visibly can cut costs or drive up revenue. Cutting costs, of course, is something that you are all under pressure to do. Driving up revenue is not, or the law firm is. So we need to look at how we can understand what efficiency might mean and how we might be able to measure some places that a document management system can have its most effective impacts on that. So let's give it a try. And here's some of the things that, both in my own personal history in working with very large firms and in my history here with RBRO Solutions, that we have done considerable work looking on. So how do we determine some hard numbers? Well, one is to measure some time. How much time amongst your whole team is spent? We usually say try to measure this for a month. How often are documents misfiled in a wrong folder on your Windows Share or whatever you may be using, or in SharePoint, for instance, whatever you may be using right now to manage your documents? How many times are things filed in the wrong folder? Research from, we have Coopers and Lybrand here, it would be PricewaterhouseCoopers now, of course, suggests that the cost of misfiling and refiling a document is about $120 when I look at people trying to find it, searching around, browsing from folder to folder. That starts to add up, no matter who you are. And I know it happens to all of us. It happens all the time, and I can't find things. These are costs. What else? How many times are documents recreated because they can't be found? Research again suggests that the cost of recreating a document is about $220. And I have seen this happen myself too many times to count. I can't find something, I can't find something, I can't find something. I stopped looking for it because I figure I can probably recreate that more quickly than I can find it. So if we take a conservative estimate, let's assume that the assistant, for instance, in a firm reproduces one document per week at $220 per document, that's about $11,000 a year per person. So that starts to add up. And you take that by the number of document handlers, whether your attorneys themselves are handling documents, or you have assistants, or even word processing pools that do that, that starts to add up. Measure how many times manual versioning systems have resulted in costly errors. I always like doing this when I'm demonstrating document management systems and talking to firms that currently don't have a document management system. I ask them a question saying, have you ever been in a situation where a wrong version has been sent, either back to the law firm, or the law firm themselves has sent out an incorrect version, or you have sent an incorrect version to someone, and it has actually cost either tremendous amounts of embarrassment or actually cost money. And people around the table will nod their heads, knowing full well that it's happened. Of course it's happened, but they won't tell you the details. Those are important things to understand, and if you talk to appropriate people, they will tell you some of those stories about what that may have cost. The value of versioning cannot be understated. Measure your paper document costs where you can. Many CLDs have their law firms doing this for them, but try to extract, if you can, the costs of offsite storage and retrieval, of shredding, printing, filing, the cost of all your filing cabinets. All of that costs money. And you add all of that up over the course of some time, and you see that managing paper and trying to manage documents in an electronic format that is not specifically structured and built for managing documents can be costly. So how do we put all of this together? Well, we calculate the cost of these activities, take a blended salary rate. It's much easier than trying to create that for each individual within your legal department. Those numbers will surprise you. From those numbers, you calculate the number of hours saved per individual and extrapolate those savings to actual cost savings. And we have learned, I mean, it's a very relatively simple thing to do. We have learned that the average cost savings we've missed this on the slide somewhere, the saving 1 hour per week per individual, I don't know why that cloud piece is there, results in a 12 to 18 month ROI. And that is substantial. Anything in our books, and me from an ancient old IT director says, if I can get a less than 2-year ROI on a substantive software implementation, I'm in pretty good shape. So we're hoping some of those can help. But the next question we would ask would be why the cloud makes this even easier. So before the cloud, to do an on-premise implementation of a document management system reflected large-scale upfront capital costs. For software licenses, you needed additional servers. And of course, when you're buying software licenses, you pay your first year maintenance up front. Those can be, even for a relatively small number of people, those can be relatively large upfront costs that are specifically on the capital side of the budget. It required a great deal of support from the IT group. There would be a project of putting servers together, of installing software, of configuring software, of doing all the network tests that are required. Lots of project involvement from your IT team. Requires substantial IT commitment on the back end. They have to change their backup routines. This new system needs to be included in your disaster recovery processes. All of that adding up to a relatively large upfront cost, requiring dedicated IT staff. All of that adding to expense. Now we're going to go backwards a slide to where we have this bit about on-premise versus cloud. I want to be very clear on one thing about when you look at a cloud implementation versus an on-premise environment. If you are looking for savings overall, they may not actually be there over the course of a long period of time. You're going to come out effectively at the same kind of price. However, there are some substantive differences in why the cloud carries benefit. And first and foremost is that without that upfront capital cost, things are much easier to justify, and more specifically for the life of your document management system in the cloud, that lives in the expense side of a budget. And certainly from your IT manager's perspective and from your financial officer's perspective, expense items, as we all know, expense items are that much easier to deal with, that much easier to justify. And an expense item spread out over 5 years, as opposed to an upfront capital cost of 5 years, can make a substantive difference in my ability to fund something like this. That's before the cloud, looking at on-premise. And this is one of the things that made on-premise document management system implementations for corporate legal departments somewhat difficult at times to justify. And this is why the cloud, which is what we're here to talk about, why the cloud has changed and made things much more available for corporate legal departments. After the cloud, minimal upfront capital costs, cloud subscriptions from the expense side, minimal IT support. I have heard that term a million times. This time for once, I believe it. Minimal IT support is required for a cloud implementation, and generally you have an internal cost of implementation. Your IT staff will charge for the implementation of new servers, for the implementation of backup processes, and all of that goes to the upfront cost of implementing. When I'm implementing a cloud environment, that is all taken care of by your cloud provider. And when I say minimal IT support, I never say zero, of course, but it really means, if anything, perhaps they do some monitoring of bandwidth, but that's it. There is no help desk requirement for them to support if the system is down. That is handled by the cloud provider. Security is handled by the cloud provider. Upgrades, capacity planning, disaster recovery, all of those things are handled by the cloud provider, requiring very little uptake from your IT department. And as the IT department is supporting mainstream business, as we all know, generally not a lot of time for the legal team. This makes it easy because they really don't need to be involved. And we have seen we've seen tremendous uptake on that. And in the cloud implementations that we have done, we've had very satisfied IT members. Once they've learned that this is cloud, they've almost backed off. Said, okay, this is great. We really don't need to worry about it. We talked a little earlier about easier collaboration with your panel of law firms. Once I have a presence in the cloud, then the ability to share, either with one law firm or multiple law firms, to share those documents back and forth with lawyers and attorneys at your firms becomes that much easier, because they as well can access this cloud through proper secure mechanisms. They are not accessing behind your own firewall. They're not accessing in unsecure ways. They are accessing through the cloud, making life easier. And your document management system vendor will be happy to show you what those collaboration products are. So why now? Why wasn't this all available before? Well, offerings from all the DM vendors are more mature, gained industry acceptance, partly because growth has been spectacular on the cloud side. We are now seeing, and this is a point later, we are now seeing more and larger firms, both moving from previous document management systems to new document management systems, or moving their current document management systems to the firm, to the cloud. We are seeing large firms in excess of 2,000, 3,000 people moving to the cloud. That builds not only confidence amongst other people, but it forces the DM vendors to ensure that their cloud presence is mature. And that mature cloud presence is a benefit to a corporate legal department who wants to move 40 or 50 people into the cloud, knowing that that document management system is already mature and stable in the cloud. Security is best in class. Security is always talked about, and I prefer to look at it this way. In our Canadian example, for instance, where our document management vendor works within the Microsoft Azure cloud, there are almost 300 people on the Microsoft team doing security for Azure. I know that my IT group does not have that, and they can produce at any time. Any of your cloud providers can produce their SOC compliance certificates. They can produce all of those certificates they need. They're very open about security, and I would suggest that cloud providers can provide a much higher level of security than we can as individual and smaller corporations. So security is best in class, and it is also completely open to conversation and proved. Many large international firms, we've just talked about that, in the process, is easily expandable to include future requirements. What we see, for instance, in corporate legal departments is start with cloud work for document management. Very quickly, the idea of extending that to whatever records management functions you may have, this works specifically and largely in banks, Before cloud, that was still a costly and difficult initiative because I'm stuck again with new servers, with new licenses, with a whole new project. If I want to expand and, for instance, include records management in my cloud subscription now, it really is a matter of additional monthly fees. And that's all. The simplicity of expanding, expandability in the way of storage is managed not by your IT staff, but again by your cloud provider, who will who keep you informed of your current usage levels, will warn you about usage levels that might be pushing up against your limits, so you can renegotiate what your storage levels are. All of that makes expandable future requirements quite easy to handle. We have seen, in our experience, many times in some organizations where a single department, for instance, the legal department, moves to the cloud, puts a document management system in the cloud, and very shortly thereafter we see interest in the same firm, but for instance from the compliance department, from other departments. We see them wanting to expand, because once the cloud presence is there, the expandability is simple and easy, and once again does not really include the IT staff from the mainline business. Cloud pricing has stabilized. This was a complaint, and I remember trying to fight through some of this myself over the course of up until about a year ago. It was difficult to analyze cloud offerings from different vendors because the pricing was entirely different. It was difficult to understand if I was getting fair value for my cloud pricing, and the cloud pricing was fairly consistently changing. That has stabilized, and you are able now to make cloud pricing comparisons amongst the major vendors, and what features and functions you get for those various fees, and it has stabilized, and we are seeing that there's not a great deal of change. Another substantive change that we have seen is the availability of international data centers. Again, us operating here from being a Canadian company, this was crucial to Canadian firms due to document residence rules, etc., things like GDPR, that we have control over where the original copies of our documents are stored. So now, for instance, with Canadian data centers, UK data centers, Asian data centers available, much more choices available. This is important to the larger multinationals, and some of you may have legal departments in other countries. It is important to understand where precisely documents are being stored, and this is where the idea of what's called true cloud, where I supposedly, just like Google is a true cloud, I have Google Mail, I have no idea of where it's actually stored. It is important to be careful about that term, true cloud, because I do need to know precisely where my documents are, and you need to discuss with your vendor to ensure that you understand that. But those available data centers, and that is growing as time goes by. We're finding more and more, especially with the Azure cloud, we're finding more and more data centers in different areas, different jurisdictions coming online. So if you want to do this, if you want to implement a document management system in the cloud, or if you have thoughts of moving your current on-premise implementation to the cloud, how do you do that? What's the right thing to do? And yes, this is a little self-aggrandizing, of course, but I would suggest that we have a tremendous track record in doing so. But either way, this is what you need to look for. You need to look for an implementation partner who has proven experience in corporate law departments. Practice in a corporate law department is entirely different than in a legal firm. Cause justifications are different. Workflows are entirely different. And the document collections and the types of documents and how they need to be managed are entirely different. So look for someone who can offer up some proven experience with corporate law departments. Proven experience moving from on-prem to cloud using industry-leading purpose-built tools. If I have an on-premise document management system and I need to move it to the cloud, there are some complexities in doing so. It's not sort of a simple copy my database. There are some complexities, and your provider needs to have dealt with that and have built some very specific tools to help that happen. They need to be working in concert with your document management provider to make sure that they have access to those APIs and to the proven methods for doing that, which is the next step. You need to ensure that your vendor has a proven ability to work directly with your vendor's cloud team. Now, each of the major document management system providers does have a cloud team who are working on nothing but cloud environments. You need to ask them and to ensure that they have a proven working relationship and ability to work with that vendor's cloud team directly. The right implementation provider needs to make sure that users understand how to use the system. In adoption. Trainers need to be experts. Trainers don't, and I don't want to, I don't want to discourage others here, but people that are training in Word and Excel may not necessarily be the right people to train in document management because they're reading the same script that I can read. I want training delivered by people who have been delivering document management training for some time and can answer those questions that come up that are specific to document management. I want people that have spent their time training just that. Look for an implementation provider that can provide that kind of training to build the adoption that you need. Look for support. Certainly, like any software in the cloud, you will get support, and I'm using air quotes there, from your document management provider. But that support, to be honest, like any software, like Microsoft, like anything else, can sometimes be lacking. They have, they will recognize they have a problem within 4 hours. They don't ever say they'll solve it within 4 hours. You need to plan that end user support in concert with your implementation partner. Make sure you have reliable outsourced support. If you want to delegate some of that, in some ways, while I've talked a lot about not requiring a great deal of IT support, that's a double-edged sword, because the other thing that you won't get, of course, is direct help desk support for your new cloud-based DMS that your mainline IT group knows nothing of. So when it comes to help desk type support, day-to-day call, you may need to look at your end user support functions and how that works. And any good implementation any good implementer should be able to provide those types of outsourced after implementation support. Talk to them about that. Select an implementation vendor who understands your business, can guide you through the process. Again, can demonstrate deep experience with CLDs. Look for an implementation provider who has developed their own tools to assist in these processes. Again, as I say, there's some complexity. It's not something I can do. So ensure that they have gone through the thought process to understand that they need tools to do this. That simply having an IT background isn't going to be enough. The big one is data migration. Of course, if you're moving from an on-premise document management system to a cloud system, there is a migration to do, and you will have to take all of your current content and move that to the cloud environment. That again has its complexities. Look for a vendor who has done that many times. If you are looking at implementing from scratch a new document management system, look again for an implementation partner who has the proven ability and the proven tools to look at what is now a lot of content that may be organized in different ways on different servers. Some may be structured, some more structured than others, than other data. Look at a vendor who has done multiple migrations, who has the proven ability to show you that they can take that kind of content and move it into the structures required for a document management system. And that is what we wanted to talk about. I would like to ask you all, if you haven't already, to please fill out the poll for us. We'd very much like to understand what the group that's listening here today where they are, what your interests are, and who you are, so we can understand what your concerns might be. And then I think we want to open that to questions. Marcia, do we have questions?
I do not see any questions.
Mhm.
I'm going to end the polling right now.
Share the results.
And throw the evaluations up as well. And if you want to wrap up, Peter.
Okay. No, this is good. Well, thank you all for your time. There we go. So we have I manage leading. We have none, 43%. That's much larger than I thought. 100% considering move to a cloud-based document management system. Good to know. Well, if that in fact is the answer, that 100% of the people on this line today are looking at moving to the cloud, then I think perhaps we've hit a note here and have shared some information that might be useful to you. We are, of course, more than willing to talk to you about that cloud migration, some of the points that we've touched on today, some of the complexities, some of the things to look for in an implementation partner for that cloud move. We would be happy to discuss this with you. I know, Marcia, you will be distributing this or posting this presentation up to the site. It does have our contact information there. Please feel free to reach out to us about any of these cloud concerns that you may have. And thank you all for your participation.
And thank you, Peter, for the great presentation, and RBRO for sponsoring. And the evaluations are now available, so if you could take a few moments to complete, that would be great. And thanks, everyone, to attending today's webinar. We'll look forward to seeing you in the future.